you may notice that I'm wearing a hat tonight. And that really has to do with two different things. Number one, I look like a bum and I need to cut my hair. Number two, you saw the title of this video, 5 ways that you can make your Glock trigger better. And if you see the patch here, it says chick magnet. Now, I bet you didn't know that having a badass Glock trigger is actually more of a, panty dropper than driving a Camaro. So here we go. I'm going to teach you 5 ways that you yourself can make your Glock trigger better. I just buy one from you. Now that is actually quite valid. But maybe you want to do it yourself. That's how I got started, and I can definitely understand the want to do it yourself. So let's start off with number 5. Number 5 is actually very common. It's probably the most common and the one that everybody gets started on. It's the trigger connector, disconnector, whatever you really want to call it. That is normally where people begin. And you will find for $15 you can get a hold of the Ghost 3.5 connector. It's probably the most common. Everybody's got one, everybody's had one, and most likely they've replaced it by now. However, there are a ton of them out there that have been rebranded. I actually have an article on the website that talks about this, and there's a reason why most people replace them, and there's a reason why they're only $15. They're kind of a bad copy of the Glock minus connector or the 4.5 connector. I don't really recommend it. You can put it in there. It's going to be lighter, which for a lot of trigger noobs, they want that poundage lighter. And the only poundage that matters is probably with your girlfriend, not your trigger, because it's really the action that counts. And the Ghost 3.5 is just reset that matters. If you want to shoot fast, if you want to shoot accurate, ride that reset. So the Ghost 3.5, no. The ones that I do recommend would actually be the Glock factory dot connector. They call it a 5-pound connector. It is the factory connector in the Gen 4 and Gen 5. Excellent connector, very crisp, standard reset. I really recommend it if you can find it right now. Being that this is 2020 and we have the coronavirus, supplies are a little bit hard to find. Ask me how I know. The next connector that I would recommend would actually be the Glock minus connector. It does have more of a rolling break, but it is it's the best minus connector that you're going to find out there that sticks to the factory style configuration. You're going to spend about $25 on it, and it's the best of the bunch. Reset, reset's decent. But if you're looking for that lower trigger weight, the Glock Minus is the way to go. The next trigger connector that I would recommend would be the Ghost Edge 3.5. That one, they've actually done a little bit of reworking of the style of the connector, the way that it rides on the trigger bar. You're going to spend about $35 on it. But if you want an aftermarket connector that's going to do basically a trigger job in a single piece, that would be the one. Spend the money on it. It will have a rolling brake, but the way that it feels and rides on the connector bar, you're not going to get that mushy sensation. So there you go. It also has a considerably shorter reset in most applications. So that would be the way I would go. Dot, minus, or aftermarket Ghost Edge 3.5. So that's number 5. Number 4 is what I would consider modification that is not a modification. You're going to find trigger springs, trigger return springs that are heavier than factory. Unless you are again worried about that poundage, leave it alone. All it's going to do is make your reset softer. Leave the factory trigger spring in there. Don't do the 6-pound, leave the 5-pound in there. That's number 4. It's really simple. Number 3. Number 3 is a little bit more interesting. Number 3 is the 25-cent trigger job. This one's practically legendary. For some people, this is where they start out. They've seen it on a forum. They've heard about it. It's mythical. The 25-cent trigger job. And you're going to take your components out. You're going to find you're going to go to your garage and you're going to go get the metal polish that you used for the rims on your panty dropping Camaro. And you're going to take your time. You're going to hand polish all your little bits and pieces. Some people are just going to shine it up. Other people are going to take a little bit more time and go all to your working surfaces. And what's going to happen is you're going to put that back in there and it's going to feel like you spent 25 cents. No, I take that back. It's going to feel like, depending on how well of a job that you did, it's going to feel like you put 500 rounds through it. Maybe 1,000. Just depends on how good of a job you did. And 25 cents of your old mother's polish is probably cheaper than 500 rounds of ammunition. So if you've done that, then you win. That is that's number 3. Do I recommend it? Yes. If you want to do it on your own, I do recommend it. Just be careful on what you do. Polish the working surfaces. All the rest of the stuff that really just kind of rides in the frame and doesn't do anything, waste of time. Spend your time researching and looking at what does what inside the frame, inside the slide. Check it out. Look, see what's what before you just take it out and polish, like they say on the internet or on Facebook. Actually, do some research. Okay, number 2 is up next. And number 2 is probably where I got the most lost, where I really thought it was going to make a big difference. And that would be aftermarket trigger shoes. Aftermarket trigger shoes, the aluminum flat triggers. They look good. Some of them look ugly. Some of them work. Some of them, they're trash. They're garbage. And I could make a list, and maybe I will later on, of which ones I recommend and which ones I would just not. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. With the trigger shoes, you're going to really get only a couple benefits. It's not going to change the entire feel and experience of your trigger. Okay? It's going to normally reduce pre-travel a little bit. They can only take up so much or you get in trouble. Trust me. The other thing that they might do is they might shorten up the over-travel or over-travel a little bit by their design. I actually have a short write-up on the website that you can get more information on this. Now, the flat triggers will provide a little bit more leverage than a curved trigger, just because normally on the flat trigger you're actually going to ride your finger down a little bit farther, which gives you more leverage, so the trigger is going to feel a bit lighter. But overall, an aftermarket aluminum trigger shoe is going to not net you a lot of benefit. Probably one of the biggest benefits is the fact that the trigger safety tab, or trigger dingus if you will, if you're all about the poundage still, is going to recess flat into the trigger face and not cause you and your soft hands to hurt after a couple hundred rounds. It's not a bad thing, it does work. But really, with an aluminum trigger shoe, aftermarket trigger shoe, look for the one that looks good for your build. If that's what you're going for, is the look of the build, that's probably where you should go. There's some beautiful ones out there. Overall, for the most part, it's not the trigger shoe that matters. That's it. Action overlooks. Okay, here we are. Number one. We've made it to number one. What is the very best thing that you yourself can do for your Glock trigger to make it the panty dropper? So you can get that poundage in there, if you will. Well, what is that? Buy a tactical pontoon trigger system. Let me tell you why. I have a graveyard of parts. I have been through connectors. I have been through trigger bars. I have been through aftermarket trigger shoes. I have been through springs upon springs. I literally have a mountain cemetery of dead triggers. I've been there. I've done that. I've broken it. I've modified it. And if anything, I've learned from it. And if you want an awesome trigger system, you go tactical pontoon. That's where it's at. DIY is great, and for those of you who really want to get into it themselves, a video that I would put out isn't going to do you justice. You already know. You are already playing with it. For those of you who want something that you don't want to spend a lot of money on, broken parts, or second guessing, or mismatching things, go with a tactical pontoon. That's the way it is. So maybe the title was a bit clickbaity, I don't know, but I'm just being real. Buy a tactical pontoon. I will be glad to build you one and get you where you need to go. So there it is. 5 things that you can do, and one that really counts. For that, I'm James at Tactical Pontoon. We will catch you later.